Imagine selling someone a $100 million airplane and then realizing it's vanished. No flight records, no passengers, no trace. Just gone. That's exactly what happened in the early 2000s when one of Airbus's first jets sold to China simply disappeared. Years later, when it finally resurfaced, what investigators found would send shockwaves through the entire aviation world. It wasn't stolen to be flown. It was stolen to be copied. That missing plane became the blueprint for what China now calls its first homegrown jet, the COMAC C919. The aircraft Beijing claims will one day rival Boeing and Airbus. But behind that polished marketing video and triumphant rollout was a secret history that the world wasn't supposed to see. Let's rewind. Back then, Airbus was thrilled. China was buying Western jets like candy, and French manufacturers were eager to get in on the action. One of those aircraft, a shiny new A320, was sent off with full ceremony, champagne, and the usual diplomatic smiles. Then, silence. It never entered commercial service, never appeared on any flight logs, and wasn't reported lost because technically it wasn't. It was just missing. For years, the story floated around as rumor. A ghost plane swallowed by bureaucracy. Then whispers started to leak out from engineers and former intelligence officials in France. The aircraft hadn't disappeared. It had been taken apart, bolt by bolt, panel by panel, its wiring systems mapped, its design reverse-engineered like a giant 3D puzzle. And that's how the C919 began. Not on a drawing board, but on a disassembled A320 spread out like a classroom experiment. To understand why this mattered, you have to understand how elite the Airbus A320 really was. When it first launched, it was the poster child of modern aviation. Fly-by-wire controls, lightweight composite materials, insane fuel efficiency. It was the aircraft that changed how short-haul flying worked. Owning that design was like holding a cheat code to the aviation industry. But China had one problem: access. Western aviation is built like a closed club. Every bolt, every engine part, every line of software is protected behind contracts, patents, and export laws. And China, while desperate to join the big leagues, wasn't invited to the VIP table. So, when that A320 went missing, Airbus quietly panicked. Confronting Beijing was pointless. You can't exactly knock on the door of the world's largest market and accuse them of grand-scale corporate theft, especially when half your future sales depend on their goodwill. Diplomats told them to keep it quiet. The company gritted its teeth and moved on. Officially, nothing happened. Unofficially, everyone knew. Years later, the C919 rolled out, China's proud declaration that it could now build a fully domestic airliner. The plane looked sleek, modern, and eerily familiar. The nose shape? Nearly identical to an A320. The cockpit layout? A déjà vu moment for any Airbus pilot. Even the windows lined up the same way. When photos of the prototype hit the internet, aviation nerds had a collective meltdown. "It's an Airbus in cosplay," one engineer joked online. But beneath the memes, Western manufacturers were genuinely uneasy. Because imitation wasn't just flattery, it was competition. The C919's goal wasn't small. It was designed to break the two-company monopoly that's ruled the skies for decades. Boeing and Airbus. Together, they control roughly 90% of all commercial aircraft in the world. They've been untouchable until China decided to join the party. At first, Beijing's plan sounded logical. The country has the world's fastest-growing travel market. It buys hundreds of aircraft a year. Why keep sending billions to the West when you can build your own? The C919 was meant to be the pride of Chinese engineering, proof that the world's factory could also design. But there was a catch. Building an airplane isn't like building a smartphone. It's not about assembly lines and labor. It's about systems. Thousands of components that all have to work flawlessly at 35,000 feet. That's where things got complicated. It's not because the plane is unsafe. It's because trust in aviation isn't earned overnight. Airbus and Boeing took decades to prove reliability, to build maintenance networks, to train pilots and mechanics worldwide. A new jet can't just look the part. It needs a support system that stretches across continents. And COMAC, for all its funding and political muscle, doesn't have that infrastructure yet. So while Chinese airlines proudly display their C919s on tarmacs, international operators are keeping their distance. They're not ready to gamble hundreds of millions on an aircraft that might lack spare parts availability or global certification. But the thing is, this isn't really a story about one plane. It's a story about how modern geopolitics bleeds into the sky. When France found out about that missing Airbus decades ago, they knew the political cost of confrontation was higher than the plane itself. Today, those same politics dictate who builds, who buys, and who flies. You'd think that with Boeing tripping over itself and Airbus drowning in backlogs, the world would be begging China for a new aircraft option. Right now, airlines are so desperate for jets, they're basically pre-ordering planes that don't even exist yet. Boeing can't deliver fast enough. Airbus has a 10-year waiting list. And yet, nobody outside China is lining up for the C919. That's because in aviation, reputation is everything. No airline wants to explain to passengers that their brand new jet suddenly can't fly because a shipment of landing gear bolts got held up at customs. The C919 may look ready, but the invisible machinery behind it, the supply chains, service centers, maintenance crews, spare part networks, just isn't there yet. Building an airplane is easy. Building an ecosystem is the real game. Think of Boeing and Airbus as the McDonald's and Coca-Cola of the sky. They've spent 50 years setting up global support kitchens. Thousands of engineers, hangars, warehouses, and training programs spread across every continent. You can land a Boeing in Nairobi, Sydney, or Toronto and still find a certified mechanic who knows exactly which screw goes where. COMAC, they're still hiring. And then there's the paperwork. Every country has its own aviation authority. FAA in the US, EASA in Europe, and dozens more. Before an airline can fly a new aircraft internationally, every one of those regulators needs to sign off. That's not just technical approval, it's politics disguised as safety. As of today, the C919 has certification only inside China. Outside its borders, it might as well be an experimental prototype. It's ironic. The whole idea was to escape Western dependence, yet the jet's global future still depends on Western approval. Now let's talk about the ghost in the cockpit: performance. On paper, the C919 should be a beast. It's newer than the 737 MAX and the A320neo. It had the advantage of starting from scratch with 21st century design tools. In theory, it should burn less fuel, fly farther, and run quieter. In reality, it's lagging behind. Why? Because COMAC had to use what suppliers were willing to sell, not what they actually wanted. Those shiny LEAP-1C engines? They sound impressive, but they're a dialed-down version of the more advanced LEAP-1A and 1B models that power Airbus and Boeing's latest jets. It's like buying the same car model but getting last year's engine because the dealer wouldn't sell you the new one. The result? Shorter range, higher fuel burn, and a plane that can't quite match its rivals on efficiency. In aviation, that's everything. A 2% difference in fuel economy can decide whether an airline makes a profit or not. Multiply that over thousands of flights, and the math gets brutal. Then comes reliability. When you're flying 100 tons of metal through the stratosphere, even the smallest component failure can ruin your week, or your airline's stock price. Boeing and Airbus spent decades torturing their planes in every climate imaginable just to make sure nothing breaks. COMAC doesn't have that luxury yet. They're still building data from scratch, learning how their own jet behaves in monsoon humidity, desert heat, or Arctic cold. Until those statistics exist, no foreign regulator is taking the risk. Right now, COMAC's production line moves slower than a Sunday bus. Boeing and Airbus pump out a plane almost every day. COMAC? Roughly one per year. They hope to reach 150 jets annually by 2030. Which sounds great until you realize that Boeing and Airbus already make more than 1,000 each every single year. So the C919 isn't the industry's next revolution. It's the first draft. And like any first draft, it's rough, full of promise, but still learning how to walk. But the bigger story here isn't about which plane flies farther or burns less fuel. It's about control, technological independence. China doesn't just want to build a jet, it wants to own the knowledge of how to build one. That's why they were willing to spend decades reverse engineering, experimenting, even risking diplomatic blowback. For them, every rivet, every software line, every turbine blade they learn to make is one less dependency on the West. And that's what makes the ghost plane story so fascinating. It isn't just about theft, it's about transformation. Airbus may have lost one aircraft, but China gained a decade of industrial insight. Was it ethical? Absolutely not. Was it effective? In some ways, yes. The C919 exists. It flies. It carries passengers. It's not vaporware. Still, Beijing's biggest test won't be technical. It'll be trust. You can't copy trust. You earn it. Flight after flight, year after year, until airlines stop worrying about headlines and start worrying about ticket sales. That's where COMAC has to go next. Boeing's reputation is in tatters. Airbus can't build fast enough, and both giants are stretched thin. The perfect opening China's been waiting for. The duopoly isn't collapsing yet, but it's definitely shaking. Maybe 20 years from now, when the C919 lands in London or New York, no one will call it a copy anymore. But for now, that missing Airbus from 2 decades ago still haunts the runway. A ghost reminding everyone how this story began. It's a reminder that in aviation, and in geopolitics, nothing truly disappears. It just changes shape. If you found this story as wild as that missing $100 million jet, make sure to hit like, drop a comment with what topic you want decoded next, and stick around. Because the next story? It's even crazier than this one.